Hello and welcome to our discussions. I'm delighted to be in the presence of Roger Wagner, who's the author of this wonderful tome. And we're going to be discussing his fire sonnets in a moment, and with the wonderful JAC Redford, who has set the fire sonnets to music. So it's my delight just to lead this little conversation as we discover a little bit more about it. Roger, you're sat in front of one of your paintings, which shows us another of your great trees, but the particular sonnet that we're going to be looking at is this one, and of course has a tree that has always been a part of your language as you paint landscapes, as you explore the English landscape around us. But lots of your work starts, I think, from Psalm 104 and verse 4. He makes winds his angels, his servants flames of fire. Can you tell us a little bit about how and why that has been such an important part of your journey?
This sonnet sort of begins with that epigraph, and it's a fascinating verse because you can take it sort of two ways. It's either, as it were, God makes winds his angels, his messengers, or it's he in the sort of next line, he makes his servants as though they were flames of fire. So either way, it's sort of suggesting that the kind of physical world we see has a kind of meaning to it. And this seems to me I mean, people sometimes ask me why I do religious paintings on the one hand of biblical scenes, I do landscapes on the other. But for me, they're not just two sides of the same coin. They're the same side of the same coin, because it seems to me that the meaning and significance of the world is kind of built into it. It's as fundamental as the second law of thermodynamics. It's just the way the world is structured. So that's really what I'm that's crucial in all my paintings, but it's also the actual theme of this particular poem.
So there's something very deeply incarnational about that, I suppose, that you see this spiritual significance in the physical world. Well, would you read the poem for us? It'd be lovely to hear it.
Yeah. So the epigraph again is: he makes winds his angels, his servants flames of fire. Who hears the ocean roaring in a tree that rustles like 1,000 angels' wings, and feels the writhing wind he cannot see, is seeing to the burning heart of things. For as a book has pages stamped with ink, while yet some meaning rustles all its leaves, so all things are as words that forge a link between the writer and the one who reads. And that unnamed I am that forged all things, whose presence is the ocean in a tree that rustles like 1,000 angels' wings, stirred by a wind no human eye can see, breathes hope into the ash where hopes expire, in winds that flame with Pentecostal fire.
It's really wonderful. I'm going to come back to you in a moment, but having read that, one of the things I'm struck by, JAC, is that the poem itself says the words that forge a link between the writer and the one who reads. Tell us a little bit about your journey with these words and the way that you found them being inspired in your composition.
Yeah, I think the words forged a link between the writer and the one who sets those words to music. I think I probably should say at the outset that I began thinking about this poem and the one that follows it in the Fire Sonnets together. And I saw them as a pair that would focus on individual segments of the choir, not the full choir. So the following poem makes reference to men. There is a fear men flee not from, but to. And so I decided to set that for men.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to my thinking about this poem as being a setting for women's voices. And that's what I ended up doing. I'm not sure that there was a particular link between the text and the choice of women's voices per se, but because I was thinking of the whole thing as a cycle of poems and a cycle of settings and not just of one, that became the prominent feature of this setting, is that it was sung only by women's voices. So yeah, and I was trying to find in that there's a lot of breath. I was trying to find in this setting a way of connecting wind and breath, because of course it's connected in biblical language. Pneuma is the word, I think, for spirit. It's also the word for breath. And there's this idea that when it says God breathed into man, into the dust of the earth, breathed into man his life, every time we speak or communicate or make something with our words or our thoughts, it's like we're breathing that back. We're expiring the inspiration that we originally received. And so I was trying to somehow combine that with Roger's beautiful and evocative words. And so I think, I was trying to find rustling and looking at the poem as I say this, to think of the individual words where I was trying to paint with breath, with the sound. I think it really comes down to there is the word breathes at one point, and I surrounded that with some space, so that it would really focus on that. So those are a couple of the small details, I think.
The music is very ethereal. I love the women's voices together. I find that very moving, and it is quite captivating. In a way, there is a beautiful thing about trees with the wind. We can't hear the wind. We hear the effect of the wind, and the wind is given materiality in its noise, in its voice, through its action in the tree, which I find fascinating. But you've both visited the tree in question, which for anyone who wants to go searching is illustrated here, but it's also near Britain's Maltings. Tell me a little bit about that trip to see the tree, Jack.
Well, I was in the UK for, I was working on Skyfall, the James Bond film, and I took an afternoon to go out and see Roger's paintings. He had an installation there, an exhibition, and then afterwards he took me to see the tree, which he had painted so often, which I'd seen in some of his work, which was not far from Snape Maltings. And so it was really, what's the word? To connect the prime image with the artistic image in my mind was really satisfying and important to my later settings of his poems, especially this one, which specifically references that tree. So yeah, that was a very inspiring and memorable thing to do. And of course, Benjamin Britten's music has had a huge influence on me. And we also went to see Britten's grave and a couple of other things that afternoon. So it was a really wonderful afternoon for me, a Yank on vacation there, in a sense, for the day to see some great art, to see things that inspired the art, and to also connect with my own source of inspiration in my own work. So it was great.
I mean, it was a wonderful. I was actually doing an exhibition at the Maltings with my friend sort of Mark Cazalet, who'd also lived around there. So it was, I mean, that just little area of trees and fields was actually where the Seraphim poem was sort of set as well. So it was a very important place for me, and so it was lovely to have Jack there to share it with.
Well, I think we're gonna hear your music in a moment, Jack. But if you haven't got a copy of this, there is going to be a link at the bottom of the screen that you can order this now, and Roger will sign it for you. So you don't have to go to the Smiley people to order this. You can get a signed copy directly from Rog, which I do encourage you to do. But thank you both for talking about this wonderful sonnet.